Welcome to Connecting the Dots, the channel where we follow the breadcrumbs to predict where disruptions will take us. In 2008, an engineer with 24 years of experience designing rocket avionics at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory walked into SpaceX for a job interview. His name was Kevin Watson. Traditionally, a rocket avionics system would cost around $10 million. But in that interview, Elon Musk challenged Kevin to rethink the whole thing and design a system where the bulk of the computing would cost no more than $10,000. In traditional aerospace, it would cost more than that just for the food at a meeting to discuss the cost of the avionics, Watson said. Yet he took on Elon's challenge and developed Falcon 1's avionics with a unit cost just over $10,000. That's a 1,000-to-1 cost reduction, but it didn't require a breakthrough in physics or even changing the rocket itself. What changed was everything around the engineering, the assumptions, the processes, and the speed. And when Tom Mueller, former SpaceX head of propulsion, once asked a vendor for an engine valve, they came back asking for a year and a half of development and hundreds of thousands of dollars. When Mueller told them he needed it by summer for much, much less, the vendor said, "Good luck with that," smirked, and left. A few months later, the vendor called SpaceX to ask if they still wanted the valve. "No, we're done," Mueller said. "What do you mean you're done?" they replied. "We already qualified it. We're done," Mueller recalled. There was just silence at the end of the line. They were in shock. Crossing that gap from $10 million to $10,000 and from 18 months to just a few is what this video is about. I won't give you the usual story about first principles or Elon's 5-step algorithm, but something underneath all of that, a single operating logic that explains how Tesla, SpaceX, and other Elon companies consistently do what everyone else says can't be done. Their secret operating logic is they fold time. If you enjoy my deep dives, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel reach more people. And patrons keep this channel going, so please consider supporting me on patreon.com or as a channel member here on YouTube. Every little bit helps. Now buckle up and get ready, because Elon's companies are disrupting everything, and disruptions are never boring. Let's start this quest with a quick visit to what started it all. Chapter 1. All in. Smart people learn from their mistakes, but wise people learn from the mistakes of others. And Alejandro Sahuquillo is one who did both. He founded Languing, a language learning startup that won Spain's Startup of the Year and rocketed to 150,000 users. And then it collapsed. I know people who, following that, would dive headfirst again, only to make the same mistakes, and others who would analyze their mistakes and then dive in to make new ones. Alejandro chose a third path. He devoted 6 years of his life to studying the greatest entrepreneur of our time, Elon Musk, to understand not only what he had done wrong, but what it actually takes to do it right. All in on this project, he sold his car, put everything he had on Tesla stock, and started digging. He interviewed dozens of people who worked inside Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, and PayPal. He interviewed automotive experts like Sandy Munro and John McElroy, space experts like Robert Zubrin and Liam Sarsfield, Elon biographers like Jimmy Soni and Eric Berger, and Tesla YouTubers like Farzad, Lars Strandritter, and Dave Lee. He read more than 600 nonfiction books, engineering, physics, psychology, and biographies, and took over 9,000 research notes. The result is an exceptional book he called The Musk Way. As Alejandro put it, the book itself was born thinking to be a playbook, not a biography. I'll review the book in an appendix at the end of this video, and I will soon post an interview I did with Alejandro, so to get notified, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and also follow me on X. But Alejandro isn't the protagonist of this video, Elon is. And from now on I won't discuss the book, but rather an insight that I had reading it about the magic sauce behind Elon's companies. It's not work ethic, it's not first principles, it's not even the 5-step algorithm. It's something underneath all of that. And it starts the moment you walk in the door. Chapter 2. Work as an interview. Years ago, I almost landed a VP position at Microsoft. The role was to head and build all testing operations for their upcoming Windows Phone, the test lab, simulations, automated testing, everything. A lot was at stake, so Microsoft took the hiring process seriously. There were several rounds of interviews until we remained 3. In the next round, I was dismissed. The remaining 2 finalists then had to wait for Microsoft's division head to return from America, interview them himself, and decide who would get the job. Nothing wrong with that, until you consider that at the time iOS and Android were already on people's phones. Windows Mobile was stylus-based and subpar, and Windows Phone development was stuck in the hiring process, never mind the previous rounds. By just waiting for the division head to arrive for that final interview, Microsoft handed their competitors 2.5 weeks to further widen the gap. Windows Phone lost because you can't enter a race where others have already opened a lead and then stop to wait for the perfect running shoes. These guys didn't know Agile if it hit them in the face. They didn't have the mindset to start running. Windows Phone was doomed from the start. I told this story because the contrast with how Elon hires is almost comical. Let's hear Sanjay Bhargava, former Citibank executive, early PayPal employee, and inventor of the 2-digit random deposit verification, who later went on to work at SpaceX. Tell it to Alejandro.
So then I got a call in New York, and this was interestingly at around 6 a.m. New York time, which would have been 3 a.m. California time. So I got a the call, my wife picked it up, and she said, Sanjay, there's a strange call. There's someone called Elon Musk who's saying he's from X.com and he wants to speak to you. So he looks like, and she actually said this, she said, it seems like someone from Mars. And it's all to be quite prophetic.
Right.
So I talked to Elon on the phone and I said, okay, next time I'm in California, I'll meet you up. He said, no, you don't understand. My office is sending you a ticket. Just get on to the next flight. We must meet, whatever. So I said, okay, fine. Let's go and meet. That's because I had not heard of Elon Musk. I didn't know who he was. He was almost like a nobody. But at that particular time, he had sold a company, but he was 26, 27, something like that. And there were so many things happening. This was a dot-com boom time. So I had no clue who this person was. I said, fine, if someone's paying for a ticket to go to California, go there, see what happens. Right? So Elon for about 5 minutes or 10 minutes during the day. And he said, look, I've heard good things about you. So why don't we meet at this taxi joint? And you know the story, I think, in the book. Right. So I'll keep it very brief. But the basic thing was that he purposely chose a 24-hour burger place so that if the conversation went very long, he
would continue.
Yeah.
Jimmy Soni, author of The Founders, The Story of PayPal and the Entrepreneurs Who Shaped Silicon Valley, continued the story.
They meet at 8 p.m. at a burger joint, and the conversation goes from roughly 8 p.m. to about 4 o'clock in the morning. So they talk for something like 7 or 8 hours in Sanjay's recollection. And at the end of the discussion, Elon looks at him and says, so can you come in at 7 a.m. to sign your offer letter and to get your offer letter? I'd love for you to join.
Sanjay was interviewed by Elon the same day he got the call, and 3 hours after their meeting ended, he already started work. No second round panel, no scheduling around a calendar, just a neat folding of time. It's not that they were certain about it, they each had doubts.
Both Sanjay and Elon immediately realize they've sort of agreed to get married, but they want to date a little while first. And because Sanjay appropriately is like, look, you're very young and I get the ideas are very big, but how is this going to be successful? And Elon says, you've spent a long time working at banks and we're trying to disrupt the bank. So I want to make sure you haven't learned a bunch of bad habits, right?
But waiting for decisions wastes precious time, and in a race against time, every hour counts. So here's what Elon suggested.
Why don't we work together for 15 days? And if we like each other and I like you, whatever, then whatever you're asking for, I'll give it to you. Otherwise, he mentioned some amount, which I don't remember. He said, then I'll just pay you that and you can call it quits.
In a way, the difference between PayPal and Microsoft in these hiring examples is like the difference between SpaceX and Boeing. Boeing and Microsoft prefer to plan, so they don't experience failure, while Elon wants to get shit done, fail fast, and iterate. Had Sanjay not met expectations, he would be replaced. If he had, he would be worth the hefty compensation package he requested. Either way, PayPal would have these insights fast, without wasting a single day. Elon was 27 years old back then and had a hard time getting people to join his tiny startup. He's double that age now, and people are lining up to work for him. So is he still hiring the same way he hired Sanjay? For the right people? Of course he does. Nikita Beer is a kick-ass consumer product builder and a prolific ex-user. 2 years ago, he gets DM'd by Elon.
And Elon suddenly DM'd me and said, maybe we can work together. He said, come out to Palo Alto. I was living in New York at the time, and I literally just grabbed my backpack, called an Uber, and bought a plane ticket on the way to the airport. So then I arrived in Palo Alto at midnight.
Okay.
Elon's finally free at 2, and we talk about what I could do at X. then Elon said, why don't you just get started now?
At 2 in the morning or 1 in the morning.
Just right, yeah. And I already had a lot of ideas of what we could be working on, but I think this was effectively the interview.
Right.
So I message a designer that I've worked with for 10 years, Nicholas Duc de Don. He lived in San Francisco, and I said, I need you to drive down to Palo Alto tomorrow.
I thought you were going to say right now at 2 a.m.
Yeah, I said it's a really exciting project. We're gonna work through the weekend on redesigning the onboarding flow for the X app, and so we worked basically for like 48 hours straight, build a beautiful prototype of the onboarding flow. Elon flies in after he stepped down from Doge. He walks in, we finish right then, and he said, what have you been working on? And I said, we redid the onboarding flow for the app. Hand it to him. He says, this is great. Let's move forward.
Wow.
And
that was your test.
Yeah.
DM, a same-day flight, a 2 a.m. conversation, 48 hours of work, and a prototype handed to Elon as he walked in the door. That was the interview, and the fail-fast test that was part of the work. But speed at the door is only part of it. Once you're inside, what they actually tested for is something harder to fake. Kevin Dewald is the founder of 2 startups and a former Neuralink engineer. Here's what he said about how he was interviewed at Neuralink.
The idea behind that presentation is just show us something that you've worked on where you went really deep and you can talk about everything that basically the entire stack. So, and the questions basically show, okay, I built this. In my case, we developed a sort of IoT sensor network. And the project I presented was the communication protocol we designed for those sensors, because there are a bunch of aspects there that go around basically how to set up thousands of sensors inside a shopping center, how they communicate, what happens if one goes down, how do you recover, how do you secure the communications and all those things. And that was a project I presented. And then they asked me follow-up questions so that they could basically see that, okay, I actually did the thing and I understand why I made the choices I made, what were the trade-offs, so that you can actually, the thing that you, whenever you do an interview at any sort of Elon company, is that you can actually explain your thought process and your sort of first principles reasoning to the very bottom. You can go as deep as you need, and you can justify why you did anything, going down to the physics or math level if necessary. That's mainly, in my opinion, the thing that you're doing with such an extensive interview process. You're going really, really deep into these details. You're trying to understand where the person is coming from, and if they're up to working on these kinds of complex challenges with a time constraint, and how you learn how they prioritize, how they execute, and all those things. And in that sense, it's very good, because we had a couple candidates that seemed okay-ish during the process. We were like, it wasn't bad, but it also didn't wow us. And once they started, that tiny gap between okay and wow was immense in the day-to-day work. And it made a huge difference. And you could see, and those people didn't last very long for the same reason. They just couldn't deliver.
So the front door is already a time compression machine. The interview isn't preparation for work. It is work. And the moment you're in, the clock doesn't slow down. It speeds up. Because inside a Musk company, there's one law that governs everything. This video is about moving fast. And the 2 things moving fastest right now are AI and global crises. So let me ask you something. What do you really think about Trump? And what about AOC? Do you like JD or do you prefer Bernie? How about the EU? What's your opinion on immigration, on your government, on the opposition? Who do you trust and who do you fear? You don't need to tell me, but how would you feel if someone knew your views in intimate detail and sold that profile to the very parties you distrust most? That's not science fiction. Political groups already buy behavioral data. Law enforcement buys location data from brokers. And with AI ingesting massive datasets, profiling people at scale has become trivial. You don't need to post anything controversial. Your browsing history alone is enough. Modern AI doesn't just store data. It categorizes you, predicts you, labels you. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Politics change. Governments change. What's normal today may be suspicious tomorrow. That's why I consider using a VPN almost essential. My shield of choice is NordVPN. They're sponsoring this video, but I've been using them for years across all my devices. Elon has publicly suggested using a VPN when access is restricted and when features are region-locked. So sure, I use NordVPN for that. I also use it to access my home streaming abroad. It's blazing fast, consistently ranked among the fastest VPNs, and it doesn't slow my browsing. Their third-party audited no-logs policy and RAM-only servers mean they don't keep records of what you do. But the main reason I use it is simple. Governments collect data, bad governments happen, and AI makes mass profiling easy. I can't control who comes to power, but encryption lets you control what they can see. So I encrypt my traffic through a service I trust, and you should too. To get the same protection I use, go to nordvpn.com/dots and get 4 extra months free on the 2-year plan, plus a 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/dots. You'll find that added peace of mind as valuable as I do. Chapter 3, Time over Money. Drew Baglino, former VP of Powertrain and Energy Engineering at Tesla, once said something that unlocks everything. Elon has said to the team many times, it's okay to scrap equipment or money. It's not okay to scrap time. Once you hear this operating principle, you start seeing it everywhere inside Elon's companies. Here's an example. When Tesla was choosing a site for the first Gigafactory, states lined up with their best offers. San Antonio, Texas put forward the richest incentive package, and by conventional logic, they should have won. They did not. Nevada offered something different. Fast permits, inspections scheduled at 2 a.m. if needed. The promise, we can put up a building as fast or faster than any place in the U.S. Steve Hill, head of Nevada's Economic Development Office, summed up his surprise. This is the first time I heard that incentives were not the most important thing. This wasn't a one-off call. It was policy. Han Zhang, one of the first engineers at Neuralink, described exactly how this played out day to day.
Very important. So, if there's two ideas that are about the same in terms of their promise, in terms of how good they are, let's say, whatever that means. But one required ordering parts and they would be here 2 months from now. The other one we could probably do, we'd probably start in a couple of days. It would definitely be the latter one that is tried first and prioritized. Yeah, so that influences, maybe it turns out that the first idea was better. The second idea was easier and faster to implement. That one would probably be tried. Even if it was slightly, even if it was slightly inferior, it would still probably be tried first.
Even if it was much more expensive, the faster one.
Typically, if it came down to time versus money, then the one that is faster would be preferred over the one that is cheaper. Obviously, there's if it was way more expensive, 100 times more expensive, okay, maybe then we do some extra consideration. But yeah, typically if the costs are within reason, certainly we would prefer the faster one.
So if there are 2 solutions, one available in days, the other in 2 months, the early one will win even if it's more expensive or slightly worse. Because time lost doesn't come back. Money does. Musk's reasoning goes beyond urgency. Longer timelines don't just waste time, they signal that something is wrong. Quoting him from a 2019 SpaceX presentation, if the design takes a long time to build, it's the wrong design. Extended timelines are a symptom of overcomplicated thinking. The clock isn't just a deadline, it's a design constraint. Elon was inspired to start SpaceX after reading Robert Zubrin's book, The Case for Mars. With decades of experience in aerospace, Zubrin gave Alejandro one of the cleanest explanations of why speed and cost point in the same direction.
The incentives are correctly aligned. With SpaceX, the faster you do it, the more money they make. See, in aerospace, cost is people times time. So the faster you do something, the cheaper it is. Get the job done fast if you want to save funds. Musk, whether he's using SpaceX money itself or NASA money on a fixed price contract, it amounts to the same thing. It's his own money. Okay, so he's spending the money as if it's his, because it is. Whereas if a cost plus contractor is doing something, the more it costs and the longer it takes, the better. Okay, because if their profit is 8% of whatever it cost them, it benefits them to string it out.
That's the structural insight. In aerospace, cost is people multiplied by time. Speed isn't just faster, it's cheaper. SpaceX's incentives are correctly aligned. The faster they go, the more they keep. Traditional cost-plus contractors? Their profit is 8% of whatever it costs. The longer it takes, the more they make. The loop runs backwards. Romain Hedouin is a software engineer at Giga Berlin. He came from Thales, a global aerospace firm. It's a traditional company with set budgets defined years in advance. Spending is tracked line by line. If you're over the budget, that's bad. If you're under it, good. And then he joined Tesla.
I haven't heard anything so far in 6 months of being here regarding budget. I don't think I've heard the word budget in 6 months.
In fact, for what I have researched is that instead of budgeting for like year, they budgets for teams. Like there's money and you can spend it. You don't have to say, okay, I'm going to spend it in this project, because at least for what I understand, projects inside Tesla, they're very flexible and you are iterating and changing really, really fast in comparison to other companies that they analyzed and they do a long plan for many months or even years.
Right. So that's a big advantage of working horizontally. Right, of not depending on 3 levels above you to decide what you do tomorrow. On a given day, if a user of our team has a need, we can implement that need and help them out with what they need and want. We don't have a specific timeline of in 2 months and a half we'll work on that feature. We do whatever makes sense, which is very pleasant as an engineer. If the biggest bottleneck is tire production, you wouldn't want to tell your engineers, oh no, the tire production is not budgeted until 4 months from now. You want to tell them, okay, sure, go fix it. Like it's important, fix it, and that'll improve your productivity and efficiency and everything. So it's the way that makes sense, really.
That's not financial chaos. It's a different logic. If the bottleneck is tire production, you don't wait for budget approval. You fix it. The bottleneck costs more than the fix in time. To people coming from traditional companies, it's like a strange new world. When SpaceX employee Brian Mosdell had his first phone call with his manager, he heard laughter at the other side of the line.
First phone call I was on with my boss and the other directors under him, our first staff meeting, when he turned to me, it was my turn to speak. The question was, okay, Brian, so what's your plan for Complex 40 kind of thing? How are you going to build that pad? So my thoughts were tasks that have to be done. I'm going to figure out, the manpower required, how long it'll take, the money. I'll have budgetary numbers for you in a couple of days. We confirm those up. My plan was to lay out schedules and budgets and manpower and things like that, and to focus on developing, the budget estimates needed to build the pad. And I noticed I could pick up on the other end of the phone that some people were laughing. So I thought, well, they're laughing at me. This is not, I must be really stupid here. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. So they interrupted and they said, hey, sorry, we're just laughing because we don't have budgets here. There's no such thing. Elon has in his head an idea of what it should cost to build a launch pad. Your job is to go build it for as cheaply as you can and still make a quality launch pad for the program. So that was probably my first big exposure to the differences between working for an established heritage aerospace company versus a new startup led by Elon.
Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, they are all oriented toward the mission-critical constraint, not the accounting cycle. Money is a renewable resource. You can raise more, cut costs, adjust. Time is the only thing that cannot be recovered once it's gone. Once you accept that, really accept it, not just as a saying, but as an operating law, every other Musk behavior snaps into focus. The tight deadlines, the scrappiness, the flat structures, the small teams. They're not personality quirks, they're consequences of one principle. But knowing that time is the supreme constraint isn't the same as operating by it. The question is, how? How do you actually fold time? Chapter 4, the iteration engine. The answer is loop compression. Shorten the distance between try and learn. Do that consistently across every function, and you don't just go faster. You compound. Let's start with the most visible piece, schedules. Musk has a mantra for this. Tight is right, long is wrong. And his teams live it. Here's how Han Zhang, one of Neuralink's first engineers, described what that actually looks like from the inside.
There was actually a high rate of deadlines not being met because timelines are very tight. Typically, timelines are set, I would say, overly ambitious. If we're measuring what over ambitious means is that, at the end they're not met. That's very common that deadlines are not met because you set them very tight. But that keeps the pace of progress relatively quick.
Deadlines routinely missed, and that's fine. That's almost the point. Kevin Dewald, also from Neuralink, adds to it.
Yes, we usually work with tight deadlines, even though sometimes you're not going to hit them, but they act as good forcing functions.
A forcing function. That's the engineering term for what a tight deadline actually is. It's not a prediction of when you'll finish, it's a constraint that changes what you're willing to do. This is Parkinson's law weaponized. Parkinson mused that work expands to fill all the time available. Musk's response? Make the time impossibly short, and the work can't expand. You delete the unnecessary. You stop waiting for the perfect solution and ship the good enough one. Andrej Karpathy, Tesla's former head of AI, put it precisely. 10x problems are not 10x harder. You fundamentally change the approach. That's the key insight. Extreme compression doesn't just make you faster, it makes you different. You stop optimizing the old process and start questioning whether the process needs to exist at all. Which brings in the 90-10 rule. As Brian Mosdell, who ran Florida launch operations at SpaceX, said, it's better to make a quick decision and be 90% correct than take 10 times as long to get to 99%. That last 1% is not worth the time, not when the loop is everything. Neil Joseph, former head of Model S deliveries at Tesla, learned this the hard way. Upon leaving to run his own startup, he tried to bring the Tesla approach with him. Here's what happened.
There's an internal and an external schedule and timing. And that's one of the things that I learned. So when I left and I had my startup, I tried to take that Tesla approach. And we kept, every software release that we were doing, it kept being several weeks late. And finally took a real hard look and realized part of that was we didn't fully account for everything that actually has to go into, let's say, doing a new feature release. And when we did, then we hit the schedule. And then you go, okay, what can we cut out so we make sure we do hit that schedule? So instead of trying to cram more in, it was going, okay, then what is most important and how do we get onto that cadence and actually hit the schedules?
That's the lesson, not move faster, but cut scope until you can hit the cadence. The cadence is what compounds. Here's the most extreme version of this principle I've encountered. May 2012, SpaceX has a Dragon capsule approaching the International Space Station, an unmanned mission, but the first time a private company has ever attempted to deliver cargo there. NASA is watching everything, and as Dragon closes in, a navigation sensor fails. The capsule can't berth safely. One wrong move, it tumbles into the ISS. The standard response? Abort. Bring it home. Try again next mission. But SpaceX's response? We can fix this. We just have to change the software. Wait. NASA heard this and couldn't believe it. Astronaut Garrett Reisman recalled their reaction. What? You are going to rewrite the software right next to our space station. Inside NASA, the resistance was loud. You don't push code updates to a live spacecraft approaching a crewed station. That's not how spaceflight works. But one person said go. Flight director Holly Ridings. She knew the engineer who'd written the original software. Same engineer was now proposing the fix. She made the call. The patch went up. An over-the-ether update. No air in space. The new software worked. Dragon birthed. History was made. SpaceX had just pushed a software update to a spacecraft 400 kilometers above Earth on approach to the ISS in real time. NASA had never seen anyone do that, and the reason SpaceX could do it wasn't bravado. It was loop compression. They'd iterated on that code base so many times, so fast, that the engineer knew it well enough to write new code and fix it, under pressure, live, with no margin for error. That's what a compressed loop actually builds. Not just speed, but the ability to fold time when it matters most. Fix a spacecraft mid-approach 400 kilometers up because you've iterated so many times that the code is an extension of the engineer's thinking. And it shows up at a very different scale too. Before joining X, Nikita Beer worked at Meta and Discord. Here's how he described the difference.
At an Elon company, it's a very flat organization. Large number of people report direct to Elon, and there's very few managers. Everyone has an incredible amount of agency. We come up with an idea, we build it in a week, and it's out. At Facebook, things would take months to get approvals, even after engineering was done.
1 week from idea to shipped. Months of approvals, gone. And the feedback loop that follows is instant. As head of product at X, Beer describes opening his phone to find hundreds of tags the moment something launches. He knows within seconds how it's being received. That closes the loop before most companies have finished writing the requirements doc. Musk does have a formalized 5-step method for all of this. Question requirements, delete, simplify, accelerate, automate. If you've watched other videos on Elon, you've heard it, so I won't go deeper. What matters here is the sequence. You're not allowed to automate before you've deleted. Each pass through the loop makes the next one faster. The whole point is the loop. Compressed iteration loops create pressure, relentless pressure. In most organizations, pressure is the thing you manage, reduce, apologize for. In Elon's companies, it's a diagnostic tool. Chapter 5, Breaking Things on Purpose. Pressure reveals constraints. That's the first thing to understand. Constraints and limiting factors are the points where a process can't keep up, where the robot slows down, where the assumption you inherited turns out to be wrong. Most companies try to avoid those moments. Musk's companies go looking for them. Kevin Dewald previously described tight deadlines as forcing functions, but there's a deliberate version of that same idea built directly into how they run production. Let's hear him explain.
Every couple months, we would do what we call a production push, in which we would try to manufacture, 3-4 times as many implants as we would usually do. When you do that, you quickly start to see where the process breaks. For example, I don't have enough tools or parts, or this, this fixture needs cleaning too often. So, okay, we need replacement parts, or we need to come up with a better cleaning process. And you start finding these issues, and then you work your way around them.
They're not trying to hit the higher number. The number is a probe, triple the output, and the system tells you exactly where it's lying to you. Which fixture is slower than everyone assumed? Which supplier is the real bottleneck? Which step someone added 3 years ago that nobody questioned since? That's the engineering insight. You can't optimize what you can't see, and you can't see where a process breaks until you push it past the point it was designed for. Tesla ran the same logic on its robots. During the Model 3 production crisis in 2017, an engineer noticed one robot moving too slowly. They checked the settings. The robot had been running at 20% of its maximum speed since installation, because that was the factory default. 20% of maximum speed, for years. As Elon says, factory settings are always idiotic. They rewrote the code, and operation time dropped by more than half. And then they kept going. Charles Mwangi, Tesla's former director of body engineering, explained the philosophy behind it. We are actually breaking them to see what the maximum limit is. Not configuring them, not operating them, breaking them, deliberately, methodically, to find out where the real ceiling is, because nobody else had ever asked that question. The suppliers who built those robots had never been asked to run them at maximum, so the robots were slower than anyone knew they could be, and nobody knew, because nobody had pushed. This is the invisible enemy inside every organization. Default settings, not laziness, not incompetence. Inherited assumptions, factory defaults that nobody revisits because they came with the machine and the machine works well enough. As Musk told his engineers, if you can see the robot move, it's too slow. That's not a metaphor. That's a specification. It tells you what default actually means in his system, whatever hasn't been questioned yet. Scrappiness is the same principle applied to parts and suppliers. Han Zhang at Neuralink described it directly. Engineers don't accept vendor timelines as fixed. They negotiate, push back, find another source, or even commandeer the parts.
Another example of scrappiness is there have been instances where you really need some parts. They may take a week to come in, and I just see someone tear down an obsolete contraption, something that someone else built that no one is using anymore. Just tear it down and take the parts from that and use that, right? So that can happen as well. yeah, just finding opportunities and not accepting like, if someone just tells you like, oh, there's no slots available.
Scrappiness isn't confined to small parts. Before joining SpaceX, Brian Mosdell spent 2 decades at Boeing and General Dynamics. At Boeing, working on the Delta IV launch pad, he'd spotted a decommissioned liquid nitrogen tank sitting idle in a corner of Cape Canaveral. It was a big tank, in good condition, something that could be refurbished. A 250,000-gallon cryogenic sphere like that would cost around $2.2 million new. The refurbished one, Mosdell figured, could do the job for a fraction of that. He took the idea to Boeing's management.
I went back to the Delta IV management team and offered that up. I was basically just laughed out of the room. There's no way we're doing that. We're gonna build this launch pad brand new and everything's gonna be pristine, kind of things.
Years later at SpaceX building Complex 40, Mosdell saw the same tank, still sitting there, still unused. This time, nobody laughed. SpaceX acquired it for the cost of scrap, $86,000, moved it down the road on low transporters, recertified it for liquid oxygen use. The total operation cost $250,000. The new sphere it replaced would have cost $2 million. That's one tank. Mosdell and his team pulled the same move dozens of times, scavenging test stands from California, helium rail cars from the Apollo era, equipment from NASA facilities across the country. The result? SpaceX built Complex 40 for less than 1/10 the cost of the adjacent Delta IV pad. There's a final beat to this story that I think is underrated. When Musk reviewed the purchase order for the Launchpad Foundation, he rejected it. He thought the rebar was too expensive, but the concrete pour couldn't wait. Flight hardware was weeks away, and there was no time to redesign from scratch. So Mosdell's team broke the purchase order into smaller ones that each fell below the threshold requiring Musk's approval. Think about what that means. The pressure system doesn't just point outward at suppliers and vendors, it points inward too. Engineers learn to navigate it, they find the paths that keep the work moving. The system creates pressure on itself, and the people inside it become scrappier for it. Pressure reveals constraints, and once you've found them, you need to communicate them fast and to the right person. That requires something most companies are genuinely terrible at. Chapter 6, Deleting Noise. I asked Alejandro to define Elon's method in a single operational sentence. Here's what he said.
I would say that the Musk way is a system for continuously identifying and eliminating noise, that it was just what we were talking about it. Organizational, financial, communicational, and technical, so that the true signal, the mission critical constraint, can move at maximum speed. So I think the concept of noise and signal, that it's a concept that Elon Musk picks from the 1948 article from Claude Shannon, The Mathematical Theory of Communication, that is so powerful, because everything in his companies is promote the signal, eliminate noise, and then move the signal as fast as possible.
In 1948, Shannon published a paper called A Mathematical Theory of Communication, later expanded into a book that established what we now call information theory. The central insight: any transmission system has two things: signal, the thing you want to get through, and noise, everything interfering with it.
We try to aim for something which is a very open plan to maximize communication and make it sort of fairly nice looking. That's my office over there, actually. We really try to minimize the number of offices that we have, because doors limit communication. Everyone at the company, with the exception of a few people in like HR and finance, actually are in cubes, including vice presidents over there. There's Gwen at her cube. So this is just a little area where people can meet and have sort of an impromptu meeting. Also very very open. I think it's actually quite helpful to have this openness, because then you can sort of see what people are working on their computers. Like what Matt McEwen here is doing. What are you working on there?
I'm making a assembly documentation for the Draco.
Okay.
RCS engine.
David is driving the development of our in-space thruster, which is called Draco. There's a little piece of it.
Companies are small. This is easy. A handful of people, a few communication channels, everything visible to everyone. As they grow, bureaucracy creeps in. Layers accumulate. The signal gets further and further from the people who need to act on it. Musk's entire organizational design is a system for preventing that. To push this through, Alejandro quotes Robert Zubrin. Robert told him that at Martin Marietta, they had 13,000 people, of which only 1,000 were engineers actually working on the product, about the same as SpaceX had with 1,000 total. Everything else, the layers, the managers, the administrators, was noise. For Musk, anyone in his company who isn't engineering the mission is, by definition, overhead. What does that look like on the inside? Remember that Microsoft story from earlier? The HR manager shared why I didn't make it to the final two. I was the preferred candidate on several dimensions, but my main drawback was that all groups I led had a flat structure, and they needed someone experienced with multiple layers of hierarchy. I couldn't believe my ears. I had previously told them I deliberately keep my structures flat because things work faster that way, but I guess they thought otherwise. I like to joke that I was too agile for Microsoft. But that's exactly the point. Hierarchical layers are noise. They're communication overhead that slows the signal. It's lack of agility that killed Windows Phone. Elon builds in the opposite direction. As Nikita Beer described it, at an Elon company, it's a very flat organization. Large number of people report direct to Elon, and there's very few managers. Everyone has an incredible amount of agency. So cool. They have 30 core product engineers for a platform used by hundreds of millions of people. At Facebook, that's the size of a single feature team. But what makes this work isn't just the small headcount. It's the communication overhead that disappears with it. Communication channels grow quadratically with headcount. 2 people have 1 channel, 12 people have 66. Double the team, you don't double the complexity. You multiply it. It's called Brooks' Law, and Musk knows better than to try and fight it. Instead, he builds around it by keeping teams small enough that it barely applies. And then he inserts himself directly. Here's Nikita again.
Working with Elon, I've never seen an executive with his amount of responsibility that is that deep in the weeds. He cares a lot. He does weekly reviews basically with every engineer at the company.
Wow.
And you just go around with, you have 1 or 2 slides, you present what you got done that week. He gives feedback.
Weekly. Every engineer, 1 or 2 slides. No intermediary between Musk and the actual work. That context switching between SpaceX, Tesla, XAI, X boring Neuralink sounds impossible. But it's not separate from the signal strategy. It is the signal strategy. He's not managing, he's maintaining direct contact with the signal across all 6 systems sequentially. The result, things get done at a pace that looks implausible from the outside.
When you have very little communication overhead, small teams, these miracles happen.
Yeah.
And that's how he built a data center in 2 months when everyone said it would take 2 years.
Yeah.
2 months versus 2 years. Not because of some secret technology, because every communication link that would normally slow the signal down had been removed. Brian Mosdell saw the contrast from the other side. The Delta IV umbilical redesign at ULA, the one where he sat through daily 1-hour meetings with 40 people second-guessing every decision, stayed with him as a painful memory. Settling on a redesign in all those meetings, building, testing, and going operational again, took ULA around 6 months. By Brian, it would have taken SpaceX only 1. 40 people in a room, every day, second-guessing each other, playing safe and trying not to appear dumb in front of the others isn't signal amplification. It's signal destruction. So Musk kills meetings. His official policy at Tesla, walk out of a meeting or drop off a call as soon as it is obvious you aren't adding value. It is not rude to leave. It is rude to make someone stay and waste their time. Neuralink once took this to the extreme. When facing an extremely tight deadline, they banned all meetings entirely for 2 weeks to let the signal move at maximum speed. And the best way to speed transmission channels is to short-circuit them. Musk bypasses managers and talks directly to frontline engineers, and encourages everyone to go directly to whomever they need, disregarding any chain of command. The reason is structural. Bad news gets filtered as it travels up. Managers soften problems before escalating. By the time a critical issue reaches the top, it's either distorted or too late. Musk's instruction to his teams, if you're in a meeting with me, try to bring up at least 1 bit of bad news. Bad news should be loud, repeated, and immediate. Good news can be said quietly once. Good news is not the signal. The constraint is the signal. The problem is the signal. The job of the meeting is to get that signal to the person who can unblock it, fast and undistorted. Musk put this more directly. The product errors reflect the organizational errors. If engineering teams are siloed by discipline, powertrain over here, thermal management over there, software in a third building, the product will show it. Tesla doesn't do that. Instead, they have mission teams, every skill needed to complete a module, working side by side in real time within touching distance of each other. Sandy Munro cracked open a Tesla Model 3 and found a single cable doing what 5 separate cables do in a Chevy Bolt. He called it an engineering symphony. The product didn't have seams because the team didn't have seams. Every piece of this system is connected, and there's one more piece, the choice that separates Musk's companies from every other fast-moving organization. Chapter 7. Choose the hard road. Despite the speed enabled by all this, a company that compresses its loops but aims for the wrong things will lose. Speed without direction isn't a system. It's just entropy. What prevents that from happening inside Musk's companies is the final piece. And Nikita Beer, someone who had worked at Meta, Discord, and several startups, didn't see it coming.
And I think the thing that I didn't really fully internalize before working, directly with him is Elon always takes the high road. Like, he will always do the hard things. When you're a consumer product builder, you're often looking for like short-term growth hacks, the quick wins. And I'd present some of these options and he'd be like, no, we're going to do the hard thing. He says, we have to do this. This is the most important thing we have to do. We have to rebuild the algorithm, or we have to build these data centers. And I think that's the reason so much wealth has been created with his companies and his shareholders, and why investors kind of are ready to, finance his next project, because he will always do the hard thing. And that was such a profoundly different approach to what I had been, used to, working at other companies, or a lot of stuff I've seen in tech. Like, a lot of these things, those hard things seem absolutely impossible. But when he gives engineers agency to do it and says, let's make it 2 weeks, like rebuild the algorithm in 2 weeks. Amazing things happen.
Elon tackles tasks like rebuild the entire algorithm, build the data centers, and reach fully reusable orbital rockets. Not because those are the fast options, they're clearly not, but because they're the right ones, the ones that compound, the ones that, once done, permanently shift the ceiling of what's possible. This is the principle that prevents the system from being captured by its own speed. Tight deadlines, compressed loops, signal over noise, all of it is in service of a harder target. The pressure isn't just to go fast. It's to go fast toward the thing that's genuinely difficult and genuinely worth doing. The distinction shows up most clearly in how Musk handles misalignment, which is different from failure. By 2018, Starlink was behind. The satellites were too large, too expensive, too slow to manufacture. The entire program, critical to SpaceX's long-term survival, the cash engine Musk believed would fund the Mars base, was drifting. Musk flew to Starlink's headquarters in Redmond, Washington. Within hours of landing, 7 senior managers were gone, not because they had failed. Failure is fine, even expected, because the program was moving in the wrong direction and not moving fast enough to self-correct. New leadership under Mark Juncosa redesigned the satellites to be 10 times cheaper and compact enough to double the number per Falcon 9 launch. Musk sent his first tweet through Starlink in October 2019. Beta testers had high-speed satellite internet by 2020, back on schedule. Now compare that to how Musk handled SpaceX's first 3 Falcon 1 failures. 3 rockets, 3 failed orbital attempts. Any board in traditional aerospace would have convened emergency reviews, demanded accountability, started looking for someone to blame. However, Elon didn't fire anyone. Nobody left. The team had been pushing hard toward the mission, failing in the right direction. The red flag isn't failure, it's lack of drive or directional misalignment. And the Falcon 1 team were well aligned and had drive in spades. Falcon 1 eventually reached orbit on its 4th attempt. The engineers who failed 3 times are the ones who got it there. This is a crucial distinction that most organizations never make. Most organizations conflate failure with misalignment and treat both the same way, either tolerating both or punishing both. Musk separates them clearly. Failure while aligned provides valuable data. Misalignment, wrong direction, wrong speed, wrong intensity, is the actual problem. It's not just in engineering. When he acquired Twitter in 2022, he faced the harder version of this challenge. At Starlink, he knew his people. At Twitter, he was inheriting thousands of strangers. He couldn't rely on intuition or existing trust. He needed a system. He put 3 criteria: excellence, trustworthiness, and drive. He brought in developers from his other companies to audit the code directly, not to read reports about the code, but to sit with the actual code and evaluate it. Roles that weren't building product were eliminated. The logic was exact. As James Musk, Elon's cousin who assisted with the transition, explained, product managers who don't know anything about coding keep ordering up features they don't know how to create. Management structured around management, not around creation, is noise. It doesn't matter how many people are in the building if most of them are talking about the work rather than doing it. In 3 weeks, 80% of the staff were gone. The ones who remained were the ones who were both aligned to the mission and able to execute it. Most fast-moving organizations create pressure without direction. They compress timelines and burn people out, chasing the wrong target. What Musk's companies add is the directional constraint. The pressure is always pointed at the hardest version of the right problem, and it is always a lofty goal that you want so much to achieve. In Elon's companies, this is drilled into every engineer. Failure is an option. In fact, if you don't fail from time to time, it means you aren't trying hard enough, going fast enough, and far enough. While failing won't get you fired, playing extra safe will. That's why the Starlink story and the Falcon 1 story sit right next to each other in the history of the same company. Same founder, same culture, same operating principles, and 2 completely different responses to falling short. Because the question was never, did you succeed? The question was always, are you aligned and are you pushing hard enough? So what happens when every piece is aligned and they all push hard towards the goals? Chapter 8, the compound effect, when all loops compress at once. So far, we've looked at each piece in isolation. Hiring, that is already work. Time, treated as the supreme constraint. Loops compressed until they're almost unrecognizable. Pressure used as a diagnostic, not avoided. Signal stripped of noise, and always, beneath it all, going after the hardest version of the right problem. Each one of these alone would make a company faster. Most companies have 1 or 2, a startup that moves quick, a consultancy with exceptional people, a manufacturer that runs lean. But what happens when a company runs all of them at the same time? John McElroy, of Autoline Network, has the answer.
Alejandro, let me give you a good example. So a good friend of mine designs automation equipment, automated assembly equipment. They had a contract with Tesla. I think it was for the electric motor. And he was in a meeting with Tesla and explaining to them, look, to do this automated assembly, we have to put in these fixtures that locate the motor very precisely so that we can have robots and other automation doing these things. And as it goes down the line, we're going to need additional fixtures, unless if you can, in the casting of the motor, if you can put this little lip on it, we can grab that very early in the process and we'll just hold on to it there. And as it goes down the line, we can get rid of all these other fixtures. And as he's describing this idea to a Tesla engineer, the engineer is on his laptop typing in all these things. And my buddy told me before the meeting was over, the design change was approved. And I said, okay, if you were at one of the legacy automakers, how long would that take? He goes, 2 years. So there's an example. Before the meeting's over, thanks to digital twins, Tesla has approved a design change.
2 years reduced to the length of a meeting. That gap isn't the result of one thing. It's what happens when flat structure, time over money discipline, direct signal, and a scrappy team hell-bent on success all run simultaneously. Each piece accelerates the others. Robert Zubrin identified the same compounding dynamic operating at the level of an entire industry. When launch costs are high, say $300 million a flight, spacecraft designers can't experiment. They can't risk a new battery technology to save $3 million on a $300 million mission, so they default to what's already been proven. Innovation stalls. The system locks itself in place. Cheapen the launch, and the whole logic inverts. As Zubrin put it, when you cheapen space launch, spacecraft designers can be much less conservative, and therefore space technology advances faster, and that makes the spacecraft more cost-effective. And if the launch is cheaper and the spacecraft themselves are more cost-effective, even more space business plans become feasible, and then you'll have even more launches. It's a virtuous cycle. But notice what makes the cycle possible in the first place. It's not a single breakthrough. It's the removal of the constraint that was keeping everything frozen. One compression unlocks the next. The same logic operates at the manufacturing floor. Minh Lai, CEO of Caresoft Global, an automotive engineering firm that has torn down and benchmarked thousands of vehicles, put numbers to what Tesla's integrated design approach actually produces. They counted the fasteners in some vehicle systems and found at least half as many as in comparable traditional vehicles. Half the fasteners means fewer parts, which means half the assembly time, which means half the operators, which means half the floor space per station. And if you've compressed a factory to half the footprint, the same capital investment that builds one traditional plant can now build 2 or 3. Capacity doesn't double, it multiplies. That's one design decision compounding through an entire production system. Most organizations will never run all of these principles simultaneously. They'll adopt one, speed or leanness or flat structure, and congratulate themselves. What Musk's companies demonstrate is that the principles compound. Each one makes the others more powerful. Compressed loops mean pressure reveals constraints faster. Flat structures mean signals reach decision makers before they distort. Time over money discipline means every revealed constraint gets fixed immediately rather than scheduled for next quarter. The output isn't linear improvement. It's a different category of organization. And here's the part that's easy to miss. None of this requires genius. Alejandro spent 6 years interviewing dozens of people who worked for and with Elon, read more than 600 books, and when I asked him to distill what he found, this is what he said. Not a secret algorithm, not a personality type, an operating principle applied with discipline across every function, every day. When I asked Alejandro whether, knowing everything he knows now, he'd start another company, his answer was immediate. In the future, yes, because now I know many more things, not only from studying Elon Musk because he's a great reference, but I've read so many different books and met so many different people that now I think I'm much more capable of doing a startup. That's the real takeaway from the Musk way. Not that you need to be Elon, not that you need rockets or billions, but that every default you inherited, your hiring process, your budget cycle, your meeting culture, your org chart, is a fold you haven't made yet. Every one of them is distance between where you are and where you're trying to go. Question them, fold the time, same physics, different defaults. Here's what I want to know from you. Think about your own company, your own team, your own goals. What's one inherited default that's been slowing you down? Drop it in the comments. I do my best to read them all. While this video uses Alejandro's book and interviews, it is by no means a summary of his book, just a tangent that grew from it. The book itself is something else. It's much more orderly, built as a playbook, not a biography, and it deserves its own treatment. I'll give it a proper review in the next segment, but if you don't want to wait, there's a link to it in the description. Before we start, without patrons, this channel wouldn't be possible. So if you like my content, please consider supporting me on patreon.com/connectingodots. You'll get ad-free access to all my videos and every bit of support helps. A massive thank you to my latest patrons, FG P. Trempe, Carl H., Dan S., Minh D., James, Uncle Phoenix, ZA Tumblr Email, Paul B., William S., Dylan, Daryl W., Chris W., Clean It Up Please, TNDRT, Chris D., Wilsey11, Nancy H., James B., James H., Richard B., Michael S., UNMG, Gary J., and Crew M. Thanks, guys. It means a lot. And to all my patrons, you guys rock. Don't forget to visit NordVPN to get an exclusive deal with 4 months extra to protect your online activity. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Come follow me on X, where I am connecting ODots. Until next time, I am connecting the dots, and you are amazing. Now let's talk about the book. Bonus book review. When initially approaching The Musk Way by Alejandro Sahuquillo, my expectations were low. Not because of Alejandro. I knew him from his interviews of Joe Justice, Eric Berger, Sandy Monroe, Dr. Know-It-All, Farzad, and others, and I even appeared on his channel myself. I knew he's extremely bright, highly interesting, and definitely knows a thing or two about Elon and his companies. I knew he had everything required to write a good book. The problem wasn't him, it was me. I too have read several Elon biographies, watched every interview, and even created many videos about Tesla myself, including several on how Tesla operates and the agile methods they use. I expected it to be a fun read, but not much new. Boy, was I wrong. For one, The Musk Way isn't a biography, it's a playbook. And while I assumed the book was born from the interviews, Something like, "I've had so many Tesla and SpaceX people on my channel, I might as well pack it in a book." It was actually the other way around. The interviews were born as research for the book. Alejandro went far deeper than a normal YouTuber would, putting 6 years of his life into this project. He conducted dozens of interviews with people from Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, and PayPal, automotive experts, Tesla YouTubers, a psychiatrist specializing in high-functioning autism, veterans of the traditional space industry, you name it. He read over 600 books and wrote more than 9,000 research notes, all in the name of understanding how Elon Musk thinks, and more importantly, how he runs his companies. And true to Musk's own delete principle, he cut relentlessly. Early drafts were 4 times longer than the final version. The editor, by the way, is Blake Atwood, the same editor behind Atomic Habits, and it shows. At under 180 pages, the book isn't long, but it's a bombshell, a strong storyline packed with unique anecdotes that even die-hard Elon fans won't know, and most importantly, a clear game plan on how to run your life like Elon runs his companies. I said run your life, not run your companies, because the formula applies to anything you want to succeed in. A hobby, your personal life, managing your team in a large company, it still applies. Some sections are outstanding. The 5-step algorithm, the contrast between Tesla and traditional automakers, the chapter on first principles factories, they capture why Tesla's philosophy is revolutionary without ever feeling dry or technical. It gives you a deeper understanding of how Elon actually thinks and operates, the layer beneath the headlines. It's fluent and a genuine pleasure to read. And that makes sense. Many Elon fans have read everything about him, but few can write this well. Fewer still have founded and run their own startup and bring that depth of understanding. And only a handful have also interviewed dozens of key people who worked inside Musk's companies. That combination, entrepreneur, researcher, storyteller, gives Alejandro a unique perspective that comes through on every page. So who is this book for? Engineers and builders who want mechanism, not just motivation. Elon followers who already know the 5-step algorithm and want the layer beneath. Fans who want to read new stories and better learn how Elon thinks. It's for die-hard fans and complete newcomers. It works at both levels, and that's rare. It's an excellent business book and an excellent Elon book, full stop. I don't usually give this much praise, but hey, credit where it's due. And it's not just me. Former Tesla employee and the world's foremost authority on agile hardware development, Joe Justice, posted the following on X. 2 weeks ago, I finished the best business book. The best. It replaces every other business book. They are no longer needed. I am blown away. I am thanked in the forward and afterward, along with many SpaceX and Neuralink and Tesla employees. In a follow-up, he wrote, I am not paid in any way to post this. I flew to Spain to meet the author, and we cooked, talked, laughed. Absolutely amazing. Thank you, Alejandro, my new favorite author. Congratulations on the business book of the century. And separately, this book is the best possible business book available now. Thank you, Alejandro Sahuquillo, for researching, writing, and refining this modern business masterpiece. I fully agree with Joe, but there is one caveat. Don't expect this to be a full biography. While it provides plenty of biographical details, stories, and anecdotes, this is not what it attempts to be. But as a playbook on how to lead a better, more successful, and meaningful life, this book is easily the best I've read in years. So if you're an entrepreneur or engineer and want to turbocharge your internal operating system, if you've applied for a job at one of Elon's companies and want to increase your chances of getting approved, if you're an Elon fan and want to read more about him and better understand his way of thinking, or if you just want a compelling read for yourself or as a gift, this book is unbeatable. It's available on Amazon in both English and Spanish, link in the description. I read the English version, and from me, it gets a rare 10 out of 10. Highly recommended. Let me know what you think.